Hey everybody, it's record time with Chris, episode 38, and I've got the new Chris Squire Fish Out of Water box set for you. Now, if you are a progressive rock fan, there's a good chance you already know this album, because it's generally considered to be one of the best solo albums by any member of Yes, and there are a lot of those to choose from. In fact, it's probably better than some of the regular Yes albums. So, more about that in a bit. Let me tell you what's on here. You've got the original album mix. You got the a new stereo remix by Jacko Jasix. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I wish I did. Because I respect him. He's a good remixer and he's a great guitar player. Very talented dude. And so you've also got his new 5.1 mix on a DVD. There's a whole DVD with lots of bonus footage, interviews with Chris Squire, and you get there's also a bunch of vinyl in here, including 2 7-inches. So lots of fun. I'm wearing gloves because everything I'm going to touch today is black. All right, so context. This was released in 1975, which was after Yes had Yes was like going to take a little hiatus, because if you think about it, in the previous, from 1971 to 75, they released 5 studio albums. One was a double. Maybe 6 studio albums. Like 6 studio albums, one of which was a double. And then the triple live album. And of course there were world tours and stuff, so you could understand how maybe they needed a little bit of a break from each other. In fact, 2 of the members left during that period. But also they're the kind of guys who would, spend that much time and energy, and you think about how adventurous their music was. Like, they're not lazy people. So of course they all start working on solo albums, and we'll talk about this one here. If you know the song off of Fragile, so like on Fragile, every member got to have their own thing that they wrote and controlled themselves. Well, Chris Squire's one was called The Fish, and that, I guess, was maybe his teenage nickname. So Fish Out of Water, that makes sense, right? Because he's got fish out of water. He's not in Yes. Oh, wait, but let's look at who's actually on the album, because the drummer is Bill Bruford. And again, context-wise, this takes place. So Bill Bruford, of course, the original drummer for Yes, he left after Close to the Edge and joined King Crimson. Now, that incarnation of King Crimson was wrapped up, and so what is he going to do? Well, why not play on Chris Squire's album? Sure. And this is also around the time he was playing drums in Genesis. So that's him. Now, who else is on here? Well, the other, really super important person who's on every track is a guy by the name of Andrew Price Jackman. Now, he actually was in the same church choir with Chris Squire back when they were kids, and they played together in a band called The Sin, S-Y-N, and that was before, that's a pre-Yes band, more of psychedelic pop than prog. So anyhow, well, because there wasn't really prog in 1966 and 7 when they were doing stuff together. Anyhow, he and Chris stayed in touch. He's all over this album. Could have maybe deserved some writing credits or something. Apparently Chris offered him and he turned him down, but he did the arrangements, the string arrangements. He's playing piano on here. There's also Patrick Moraz is playing keyboards on there, so now we've got a little more of that. How much out of water are we? In fact, if you've got a drummer and a keyboard player from Yes, you're not that far out. There's no Steve Howe, no John Anderson. In fact, there's very little guitar on the album at all, which gives Chris Squire more room to stretch out on the bass. And if you like his sort of, a melodic bass style, I mean, it's all over this album, of course. You're going to love this. And if you think about his, he's a good singer. He sings lead on all these tracks and does most of the backing vocals. And because I think of his time in that church choir, he has a really good understanding of counterpoint. So he can, and yes, he folds his bass around what everybody else is doing, but he can also do the same thing with his backing vocals. So it's really cool, especially in the surround sound mix, because Jacko pulled some of those backing vocals into different areas of the spectrum, just so you can kind of, you can hear them. You can hear them a little better than you can on the original stereo mix. Also, Jimmy Hastings, who is a flute player, who's on, he was part of the Canterbury scene, so he's on like a lot of, he was bands like Camel and Caravan, those groups, he's on their records a lot. And the sax player, Mel Collins, from, King Crimson, obviously, and he played with Roger Waters in the 80s. He's playing sax on a couple tracks, so it's pretty good lineup. And Peter Sinfield had some contribution as well. There's your context. So, what else is going on here? Well, we've got the, there's a nice. This is the reproduction of the record that comes in. This is my old copy that I picked up used somewhere for like $4, somewhere probably in the late 80s. So this is a nice reproduction of it. Looks great. Definitely looks great. Let's take it out here. The got a heavy, the inner sleeve here. It's on heavy paper, and the. It's got this kind of that same image as the cover, but blown out. On my original copy, the inner sleeve is just a paper one with the Yes logo on it. I won't bother showing it to you. But the label on the record itself is the same as the original. It's like that image there with the lighthouse or something in front of it. Now. The original, so they're both gatefolds. This is I'm holding the new one here, because on the original this is glued together, but on the here on the replica, this is where they tucked the two 7 inches that are in there. The one I just held up is 2 single mixes from the original album, and then we get reproduction of the 1980 Chris Squire, Alan White song "Run with the Fox." This is also all 4 of these tracks are also on the DVD, but not in surround, just in stereo, high-res stereo, and they're on the CD. So, and we get a poster, which I'm not going to unfold, but it's just it's the same image that's on the back, same image as the back cover. Nice booklet here, with a great essay by Sid Smith. If you're familiar with him, if you read your liner notes and progressive rock stuff, you've almost definitely got you probably have thousands and thousands of words if you buy a lot of progressive rock reissues. He is very good. It's a good essay. It's sometimes people, and what I like about it is it's the right length. It's long enough to be informative and have all kinds of stuff in it that I didn't know. But it's not like you spend more time reading that than you do listening to the album. So it's like perfect. Great photos, all kinds of stuff on the inside. It's the kind of stuff you'd expect, right? Pictures, so pictures of the original ads for it, newspaper clipping, tape boxes, and then, reproductions of the single labels from the original singles. There's also a folder here. This is the back. This is the front. Nope, I got it backwards. The front and the back is the back, right? Just like the album. But just be careful when you open this. Mine, the discs had shifted, so I would open it like this just in case, because they're just inserted into little pockets. In fact, you might want to think about just getting some paper sleeves and transferring them over into there. I like to do that sometimes when I'm afraid that the discs will survive. So what do we have? We've got 2 CDs. The CDs have the remastered version of the original mix you got this nice new stereo remix, and you've got the 4 bonus tracks. There are also 2 DVDs, 96:48 resolution on the DTS stream, if you pay attention to that stuff. And again, you got both stereo mixes, but you've also got the surround sound mix. And the second DVD has a long interview with Chris Squire and the promo videos for 2 of the singles, and something very interesting in my opinion. It's a like a commentary track. Basically, they filmed him with headphones on, listening to the album, and he's giving his opinions, reminiscences and stuff. He is, I think he was sort of known as a more quieter member of the group, so he's not, how can I put it? It's not as engaging as, like, say, an Ian Anderson commentary track would be hilarious. And yeah, I did mean to say Ian Anderson, not John Anderson. I'm mixing bands here. So how are the mixes? Well, I haven't listened to the new stereo mix because I'm one of those people who dives right into the 5.1. The 5.1 mix, yeah, I'm pleased with it. I think it's good. It's everything is pulled apart nicely, but you don't have stuff swirling around in any kind of distracting way. Things do move a little bit, and it's kind of like, oh, that was cool, but it doesn't distract you. Everything is presented really nicely. Jacko did a good job of pulling the different elements into different parts of the room, and it just makes it really easy to hear what's going on. He wrote a little essay in the book too, and he talks about what his process is. It's really interesting, but the thing he was trying to do, and I think he succeeded, is, if he thought there was an interesting little line that had maybe been buried in the original mix that he just thought sounded cool, he might put it in a different place just so it could kind of stand out a little bit. And also by moving something into a different area around your head, it can jump out a little bit without having to make it so loud that it covers something else up. So that's kind of like, I think that's just his experience kind of coming through. So, pretty cool. The one big difference, I think, between his style and, say, Steven Wilson's style is, I think sometimes Steven Wilson will, and it's one of the great things about him, is that he will, just kick your ass with how awesome, spacious, and environmentally kind of enveloping it is. And sometimes you can get distracted from the music and be like, whoa, this sounds so freaking awesome, wow. This is more like, oh, I can tell what's going on here, and you can really just sink into the music. So it's two different approaches. That's all. Different guys. That's it. Also, in the guy who engineered it, in the interview with him, he says he was only 21 and maybe he wasn't ready for a project like this. And I think you could kind of hear that some of the instruments don't sparkle the way that they might have. If a more experienced engineer had handled it. So, it's like you're listening and you'd be like, wow, yes, hey, I recognize that sound. That's that weird, splash cymbal thing that Bill Bruford likes to hit sometimes. You can hear it. And you'd be like, oh, wait, and that's his weird snare thing where he gets that boomy snare sound and it almost sounds like he turns the snare off and that deep, so you can be like, well, it sounds like Bruford, but it doesn't maybe sound quite as crisp or present as some of those elements would on, like a King Crimson album or a Yes album. Anyway, still, I really enjoyed it, and, but I like the album anyway. Compared to Yes, if you haven't heard it, it's just a little more restrained. It's not quite as, it doesn't go as far out as a lot of Yes stuff might, but well worth it if you are a fan. I don't know why you'd watch me talk about it for 10 minutes if you weren't, so I'm going to assume you know the music. I hope you enjoyed it. As of now, it's still available. Something else that's still available that also has Bill Bruford on it, the Record Store Day release of UK only album. That's still available at the distributor, so if your local store doesn't have one and you want it, they should be able to get it for you. And it includes like this 8-page booklet, as well as, and Eddie Jobson himself did the remastering for this. So that's a nice thing. Did I mention who else was in there? John Wetton. This is like in between King Crimson and Asia for him. So there's this label in the Pacific Northwest, like Portland, Oregon, called Mississippi Records, and I think there's actually maybe they split in half or something, and so they released this compilation called Anxious Color, and it's one of those things that may be kind of hard to find, but one of the nice things about Mississippi Records is they do price their stuff very fairly, so you could find this for probably 13, 14 bucks somewhere, but you're going to want to look for places that will stock records that don't have UPCs on them. So what the heck is this thing anyway? Well, it's like a psych compilation from 1966 and 1967, but it's called Anxious Color. And the cover, I think, explains what you've got on it very well. You see how it's dark and murky and kind of mysterious? That's more this kind of psych. It's much more underground. Like nobody ever would have heard this and said, "Oh, you guys could be the next Vanilla Fudge." No, this is all more like, "Oh, you're sort of like Pearls Before Swine, but weirder." And that's how some of this stuff feels to me. Some of it doesn't even have drums, and a lot of the song titles are things like "Why Doesn't Anybody Like Me?" What is it? Oh, so tell me the reason why people don't like me, by the group WWH, or it's maybe a singer. It's dark, and but if you are the kind of person who likes really weird psych, and just likes the idea of supporting a label that'll put out something crazy for 13, 14 bucks, go for it. Go for it. It's good. It's available right now. A lot of Mississippi stuff. I think I think it's like one of those things where, oh hell, like any other independent label, right? They make a bunch, it sells out. At some point, maybe they'll make more, maybe they won't. I think this is the second pressing of this one, but it's really, really cool. And I guess the last thing I could say about it, if you think you would like it, you will. I'll be back with other stuff in a week or two, but for now, I just want to say goodbye. Thank you for watching, and until I see you again, I hope you're listening to something awesome. Hey, like maybe what you got on Record Store Day. But anyway, so long.